Hello and welcome back to FT.com. George Osborne, the UK Chancellor, has just unveiled his budget for the year. It's very much as expected, but there's still much to discuss. With me now to discuss it is our Chief Economics Commentator, Martin Wolf. Martin, thanks for being here. Our own initial best headline that we were able to put on this was Osborne unveils budget to reward work. Scarcely as though he could have unveiled a budget to penalise work. This implies to me that this budget is somewhat of a non-event. Is there anything important that we've learned in the last 2 hours that we didn't know before?
No, for two different reasons. First, the basic budget strategy has been set out, the fiscal austerity has been set out in the first budget of this coalition government, and nothing has changed there. And second,
it really couldn't have changed.
It couldn't have changed. Yeah. It seems to be completely neutral. I haven't looked at all the detail, but it seems to be completely neutral, and the path is continuing.
Meant to be neutral.
And there was quite a big shift made in the autumn because the Office of Budget Responsibility changed its forecast. Apparently, they're not changing them again. So that's we knew already, and there's no change there. In addition, pretty well everything in this budget, as far as I can see, was leaked.
Nothing like Purdah of the old days at all,
the old
was it?
budget Purdah is really history, and no doubt that's partly because we have a coalition government. So the result is neither in the big picture of what we're going to do in the UK, nor even in the details, with a very few exceptions, is there anything surprising. We knew it all.
Okay, now it's always nice to be able to say that and really mean it, that we did know it all. Let's look at one of the more trailed measures that is a bit more contentious, which is the attempt to reduce corporation tax. Is there really a decent argument that this has been holding UK industry back, and is this the measure to help stimulate the economy that Mr Osborne obviously wants us to think it is?
I honestly can't see why. He has announced that he's going to go in the end for a 20p rate, now going to be 24p, started at 28p. Yeah. It's a sort of flagship thing. Maybe it has some morale effect, God knows. But I can see some real problems with this. First of all, it's part of a sort of global competition to lower the rate of tax on capital, which I think in current circumstances is really very perverse, and it's a zero-sum game.
Yes, precisely.
It's clearly
beggar thy neighbour.
And if a big country like us is in it, it's going to push others in the same direction. Secondly, given the interaction, which is very complicated with the personal income tax, it's going to encourage corporate retentions and corporate retained earnings rather than distribution. It's going to lower the tax as long as you don't distribute. And that is going to exacerbate the biggest macroeconomic black hole in the UK, which is corporate retentions. I would have gone for measures to encourage investment by corporations and encourage distributions. So it gets to the shareholders, they can put it somewhere else. But in fact, we're doing the reverse here. So that disturbs me too. And the final argument, of course, is that it's going to lead to, presumably, to a lot of corporations to set up headquarters here. We don't really get that much out of it. We only tax corporate income in the UK. We don't tax corporate income, at least not really, generated outside the UK. Yes. So if a headquarters comes here, but the activity continues to be abroad, it's not going to contribute much to us. So I can't see any strong argument for this, though it's going to be clearly very popular with some business quarters.
Well, and it plays into the arguments that pension funds are complaining about as well. Everybody wants more dividend yield, more disbursement of cash from companies, and there are issues. Apple has obviously been in the news in the last few days. Apple, with all the cash it has stuck outside of the US. Now, another issue that was perhaps non-completely obvious concerns stamp duty. He didn't absolutely have to raise stamp duty quite as aggressively as he has on people at the top of the income scale, or rather at the top of the price scale for houses. Is that really, again, in populist terms, there's something it's good politics to be clamping down on ultra-rich people buying very expensive properties in London. Is this tax actually going to have the effect desired? Is it a sensible way of changing the tax system?
I think the more interesting point there, I'm against stamp duties anyway. Transaction tax are very bad taxes. He should be taxing the property service income, as it were. But apparently the Prime Minister vetoed the so-called mansion tax, which actually makes much more sense. The more important thing that he's introduced may be the effort to stop people using companies as a way round the stamp duty altogether. But in general, if you've got a bad tax at 5%, it doesn't get better if you raise it to 7%. Politically, of course, the really big thing here is he's got to do something to shield himself from the argument that by lowering the top rate of tax from 50p to 45p, he's giving huge benefits to multimillionaires, and so he's got to hammer them. And this is a sort of very visible way of doing so. But stamp duty is a bad tax, and I would have liked something much more considered on how we should tax land, in my view, and property. But there's nothing there. It's a very disappointing set of political gestures.
Yeah, exactly, political as opposed to economic gestures. I mean, I suppose one final question, given that the economic strategy was so fixed, has anything changed? Osborne, more than any other leading politician in the Western world, really nailed his colours to the mast of austerity a couple of years ago. The debate may have been running against him somewhat with the change in forecasts, the fact that we're not going to get back into surplus by the next election now. Has anything shifted? Did he manage to do anything to move the dial on that critical issue today, do you think?
No, I think what's happening is absolutely... Apparently the outcomes are looking just fractionally better, but we are very much in the same world as the OBR thought at the end of last year. It's not a long time ago, and the recovery is expected to be very weak this year, another 0.8% growth, not far from stagnation really, and possibly 2% next year. This is still looks to me as though we won't get back to the starting point till 2014 or maybe 2015. This is very, very, very weak recovery. His argument will be there was no alternative, and the opposition will say there were alternatives and you didn't use them. And nothing has changed, it seems to me, on that argument.
It's the same as a year ago, really.
It's essentially the same.
Yeah, yes. Martin, thank you very much indeed. Now, even though neither of us seem to think there was anything very interesting in this budget, there will still be an awful lot more coverage on this to come during the day from the FT. For more analysis, please go to ft.com/budget.